Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Swirling Torah. We're doing Parsha Vayeitzei. It's an incredible Parsha. So the Parsha teaches us, how do we find the light sometimes where we're in those dark, stormy seas? And how do we find the Geula? How do we find the redemption when we're in the midst of the Gullus, the exile? So personally, I'm feeling it swirling around me like the last week or so. Like 2 days ago, my daughter tested positive for COVID. And then last night, my son also gets a fever. So me and my sons, we got tested today. And I got tested on Monday, and I was negative then. And just feel it all swirling around us. But this Parsha is incredible because it teaches us how to find the light when we're adrift on those dark, stormy seas. And we learn the greatest lesson from Yaakov Avinu, from Jacob. So the Parsha starts, and Yaakov goes up on the Har HaBayis. He goes up onto the Temple Mount. It was just a mountain back then. He goes up on the Temple Mount, the place where the temple would be built, where the Beis HaMikdash, the first temple, the second temple, and as Bezrat Hashem, maybe we see the coming of Mashiach soon, and we'll see the third temple being built in the middle of Yerushalayim, in the middle of Jerusalem, on the Temple Mount. And he has this dream, the famous dream of the ladder. And he sees these malachim, he sees these angels going up and down the rungs of the ladder. So first, he sees one malach, and the malach is the Sar. He's the guardian angel of the nation of Bavel, of Babylon. And he sees this malach go up 70 rungs, and then the malach falls off. So he saw the first exile, the Babylonian exile. It lasted for 70 years, and then it was done, and then we were free. And he sees the next malach, who's the Sar of Paras and Madai. He's the guardian angel of the Persian Empire and the Median Empire. And this angel, this malach, goes up 52 rungs of the ladder, and then he falls. And then our Gullus was done. Then we were freed. And we were freed in the days, the famous story of Mordechai and Esther, from Achashverosh and Haman, Harasha, Bu, Yamak Shemo. And the famous story we tell on Purim, that our redemption, our Geula from the Persian Empire. And then eventually Esther's son Darius, he becomes king, and then he allows the rebuilding of the second temple. And then we saw the next malach. Yaakov saw the next malach, the Sar, the guardian angel of the nation of Yavan, of Greece, in the Greek Empire. And this malach goes up 120 rungs and then falls. And we were free from the Greek Empire. And it started with Alexander the Great. And then we had the whole thing with Antiochus and the Battle of Hanukkah, where, the Hashmonaim rose up, the Maccabees, against the Greek Empire. And then he sees the most terrifying thing. He sees the fourth, the Sar of the nation of Edom, of Esau's children. And who is this Sar? Who's the guardian angel of Edom? It's the Yetzirah itself. It's the Satan. That's the guardian angel of the nation of the empire of Edom, which has been going on for 2,021 years, about to go into our 2022nd year of this Gullus Edom, this exile of Edom. And the angel just keeps going up and up and up into Shemayim. And Yaakov is afraid. And he speaks to Hashem. And he says, when will this end? I don't see an end. I don't see this malach falling. And Hashem says to him, he says, even if the angel climbs as high as the stars, I myself will take him down when the time comes. And it's fascinating because we see in the modern, expression of the Roman Empire in America, we see that Americans have achieved, into the stars, the Apollo missions to the moon and the space shuttle and the space station, and the empire of America has gone into the stars, and it's crazy. And this is the vision he saw. So then Yaakov leaves Eretz Yisrael, he leaves the land of Israel, and he goes into Gullus. He goes into exile because his brother Esau was trying to kill him. And he learns first, I think he learned 7 years in the yeshiva, 7 years or 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, and then he goes into Gullus. And he leads and he goes to his uncle's house, Lavan, who was the brother of his mother Rivka, Rebecca's brother, Lavan. And Lavan was a trickster. He's a deceiver. We call him a con artist, a flim-flam man, a Ponzi scheme maker. He was a very deceptive, dishonest person. So he went because, Yitzhak and Rivka told him that he should marry, one of Lavan's daughters. He should marry Rachel. And he goes to see his uncle who lives in Haran. So as Yaakov gets this well, he sees Rachel coming out to the well. Now it's interesting because Hashem had brought a plague on all of Lavan's flocks, and most of his flocks had died. And so he fired all his shepherds. And that's why Rachel was tending to the sheep, because they hardly had any flocks left. They had hardly any animals left. and Rachel comes out, Rachel comes out to the well. And this is so different because Yaakov is running away for his life. He's poor. And it's not like when Eliezer, the servant of Abraham's servant, comes with the 10 camels and all this gold, silver, and jewels to find the wife for Yitzhak, to find a wife for his father Isaac. And Yaakov is just poor and bedraggled. He's in gullus, he's in exile, and he didn't send a servant. He himself had to go, and he's being chased by his brother, and it's just he feels saddened at the circumstance that he's going to marry Rachel on her. So she comes out. So Yaakov, he comes to the well, and he removes this heavy stone all by himself, and the water rises up from the well, and it overflows into the fields, and it brings this great bracha, this great blessing into the fields, and everything's really now fertile. And then Yaakov saw this as Simon. He saw this as Simon, that Rachel was supposed to be his wife. So he got a message from Hashem that this is a sign that this is his wife. And he approaches Rachel, and he's instantly in love with her, and he kisses her. And he didn't even know yet that she was his cousin, but he saw through Ruach HaKodesh that they were going to be married, and they were going to have children. They were going to have some of the Shvatim, some of the tribes. And he started crying because he saw that she was going to die before they entered. She's going to die. As they were entering Eretz Yisrael, and he wasn't going to be buried with her. And then he asks her to marry him, and Rachel agrees, but she begins to warn him that her father Lavan is very deceptive and tricky. So they come up with these signs that he'll know it's her, and that Lavan hasn't switched Rachel's sister Leah. So they come up with these signs, and then Lavan, now remember, this is his uncle, should be happy. It's a righteous tzaddik, it's a holy man, it's the son of Yitzhak, the son of the righteous Yitzhak, the son of the righteous Abraham, two of the holiest people who have ever lived. Anyone would be honored to have this righteous grandson and son of these great tzaddikim marry their daughter. But of course, Lavan, greedy, a con artist, he wants Yaakov to work 7 years to marry Rachel. So he happily agrees. He's in love with Rachel. He's in love with Rachel. He happily agrees, and it passes like a couple of days for him. He works for 7 years, and the day of the wedding, what happens? Lavan, of course, he switches Rachel with Leah. Now it's very interesting because there's a certain midah k'neged midah, measure for measure here, because it was supposed to be that the oldest daughter Leah would marry the oldest son Esav. But because Esav also, he became wicked, and he didn't want to follow the ways of Yitzhak and Abraham, that Yaakov buys the birthright from him, and then he gets the blessing from Yitzhak. So now it's an interesting thing. So the oldest daughter Leah was supposed to marry the oldest son Esav, but now because Yaakov has switched everything, and he now has the Bechor, he has the firstborn status, he gets Leah. He gets the firstborn daughter first. And then Lavan's like, okay, so why did Rachel do it? Rachel was so concerned with the embarrassment that her sister Leah would be under that she gave Leah the signs. So she tricked Yaakov to marry Leah. So he marries Leah, and he's very mad at Lavan. And Lavan says, okay, we're going to wait the 7-day celebration period. And it's very fascinating because even though Lavan is this Russia, this is where we learn out the minhag of Sheva brachas, that after a chasen and kala, after the groom and the bride get married, and the chasana at the wedding, that they celebrate for 7 days. They celebrate with the community for 7 days. And we learn this out from this minhag of Lavan, that he waited 7 days, and he said, you'll work another 7 years for Rachel, and then you can marry Rachel. So he married Rachel in a week, and then he worked another 7 years. So right away, so Leah felt, now you got to remember, just as Yaakov and Esav were twins, so were Leah and Rachel, they were twins. And they were both beautiful, and they both looked exactly alike. But Leah was so sad, like her whole life crying that she had to marry Esav, and davening to Hashem that she wouldn't marry the wicked Esav. So, she felt like she was hated. She felt because Yaakov loved Rachel so much, she felt hated. So Hashem had mercy on her and gave her 4 sons right away. So she had Ruvain, the first son, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. So then, what had happened is Lavan had given Bilhah and Zilpah, who were daughters he had with a concubine. So it wasn't with his wife. He had Leah and Rachel with his wife, and he had a concubine, and he had 2 more daughters, Bilhah and Zilpah, and he gave them to be maidservants for Leah and Rachel. So when Rachel saw that she wasn't having children, she convinced Yaakov that he should free Bilhah from her slavery and make her a wife, marry her and make her a wife. and he did. And then Bilhah, and it's interesting, Bilhah has Dan and Naphtali, and Rachel names them. And they're considered under Rachel. It's very fascinating. So then Leah also saw that she wasn't having children anymore, and she gave Zilpah to Yaakov to free from being a maidservant and to marry as a wife. And then Zilpah has, Gad and Asher. So Leah then has two more sons, has Yisachar and Zebulun. So she now has 6 sons, 6 of the Shavatim, 6 of the tribes, and she's pregnant again with a 7th child, and it's going to be a boy. And this is really fascinating. So Leah knew through Ruach HaKodesh, they had prophecy that they knew that there would be 12 sons, there would be 12 tribes, and she knew that if she had a 7th son, she knew that Rachel would only have 1 son now, and would have less sons than even Bilhah and Zilpah. So she wanted Rachel to have 2 sons also. So she davened to Hashem, and Hashem changes the baby. It was supposed to be Yosef, it was supposed to be Joseph, but changes the baby from male to female, and then Leah has a daughter, Dinah. So then there's this whole, famous thing with the Dudayim, those, Reuven I think was out collecting these Dudayim, which I think were mandrakes, and the roots look like men, and there's this whole thing with Leah, and Reuven was giving his mother Leah if it was good for fertility, and Rachel wanted it because she really wanted to have children. There's the whole incident with that. But because Leah accused Rachel of stealing her husband, and it was so outrageous. And I find there's a famous Mefarshim on this, maybe a couple of famous Mefarshim, that all of a sudden Leah's accusing Rachel of stealing her husband. And this is Rachel who gave Leah the signs that she had between her and Yaakov so Leah wouldn't be embarrassed. And then Hashem had full mercy, compassion when Rachel said nothing. When Leah accused her of stealing her husband, Hashem had so much compassion and love for Rachel. And then Rachel finally has Yosef. And then Yaakov decides it's now time to leave the Gullus. The exile is over. So why? So how can we leave now and go back to Eretz Yisrael? What's the secret here of the Gula? What had just happened and why? So Yaakov saw, because Yosef was just born, that the Jewish people had all the components. Binyamin was going to be born in Eretz Yisrael, in Beit Lechem, I think, or outside, or Efrat, near Beit Lechem, and that's where Rachel's buried. And he saw that now they had Yehuda. They had Yehuda, and from Yehuda would come David HaMelech, King David, and then from David HaMelech would come, Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, and then eventually Mashiach, the Messiah, descended from King David, and then Yosef. And Yosef from Yosef would be Ephraim and Manasseh, and from him would be Yeshua ben Nun, from the tribe of Ephraim. And Yeshua ben Nun, Joshua, would be the leader after Moshe Rabbeinu, after Moses, and also the king, Mashiach ben Yosef, could now be born. And now Levi was born, and the Kahuna, the Kohanes, and the Levium to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. And then Binyamin was on the way, and everything now was in place. And now we had the recipe to leave our Gullus and go back to the Gula, find the redemption. So what's the secret of the light and the darkness? What's the secret when Yaakov was working in exile for his wicked uncle Lavan, and he worked 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed like just days, and he worked another 7 years. Because when Hashem's with us, when we see Hashem in the world, even if coronavirus, COVID swirling around us, even if inflation's soaring, even if we see corrupt politicians here and we see other people's behavior here, it doesn't have to affect us. It doesn't have to affect we can find the light in the darkness because we have the Torah. We are attached to Hashem. We're attached to this all-powerful, infinite being, and we can always see the light in the darkness. We can have emunah and bitachon. We have trust in Hashem, that He's with us. And none of these things are unconquerable. None of these things can defeat us because we can find the light in the darkness. And Bizrat Hashem, soon we're going to find the Geula. We're going to find the redemption in the exile. And may it come soon that we see the coming of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And we all head back to Eretz Yisrael. But when we have the Amun and Betachon in Hashem, we can turn the darkness into light through the Ora Torah, through the light of the Torah, through the beautiful mitzvahs, teaching us how to be kind to each other, and it just lights our way. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.